Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new series we're doing through the Center for Equus Coaching, where we find out how our Equus coaches are using the Equus coaching experience to support others out there in the world. While we all have a shared foundation of learning, we are all also unique in our approach to this work. So I think it might be fun to explore with all of you the many ways this work can be used. My name is Travis Stock, and I'm one of the primary instructors for the Center for Equus Coaching. I first experienced this work in 2010 as a client working through one of the more challenging phases of my life so far. Those early experiences I had partnering with a coach and the horses she worked with really changed the way I approach my relationship with myself and the outer world. Safe to say, I was hooked from the beginning, and I felt called to find a way myself to begin sharing this work with others. Cut to me training as an Equus coach in 2013 and stepping into the role of instructor in the subsequent years. But that's enough about me for now. Let's get into why we're actually here. I'm thrilled to introduce my first guest, Sue Willoughby. Sue is a certified Equus coach and Equus coaching master facilitator. That means she's pretty darn skilled in this work and offers both one-on-one coaching sessions as well as group facilitation. While her main hub is in the Seattle, Washington area, she also offers workshops in other states and hosts a podcast called A Life Worth Being. She's pretty cool. Hi, Sue. Thanks for joining me and for being our maiden voyage with this series.
Ooh, so exciting. Travis, I am thrilled to be here with you today. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction.
Yeah, is there anything else that people should know about you that I'm kind of leaving out? I know there's so much to cover, and I thought I would give everybody a little bit of background, but we're both people from Seattle, and I thought it would be fun to start with you, and I'd love to hear if there's anything else you want to share about yourself before we get into it.
How long do we have here in this podcast? I'm just kidding. I think, we can just kind of, I'll just dribble out little bits and pieces as we have a conversation. So that'll be good because I've had a lot of different experiences in my life. And I think when I first met you, I sort of found Equus coaching through my, creative, jagged little path through life.
Yeah, I think we all kind of find it that way. It is a bit of a jagged little path that we find that I don't know how I got here, but I'm really glad that I did. When do you think it was what year was it that you and I met? I remember we went for coffee here in the Seattle area and you were kind of exploring what this was going to look like for you.
Yeah, gosh, I don't know. It was before the pandemic, so maybe it was like 2018
18 or 19, something like that,
or
maybe?
19. Because I think when I first met you and we had our conversation, it was another year before I actually got into the program, I believe. And I remember you called me up or sent me an email and said, hey, we got together a while back and wanted to know if you're still interested. We're going to be doing, I think you were doing like sort of a master class or an introduction thing. And you said, hey, if you want to join in and get coached online, why not? So yeah, just rip the vulnerability Band-Aid right off.
Jump straight on in. So
Yeah.
you actually had some horsemanship experience prior to joining us as an Equus coach. So tell me how your journey with horses began and like why you're drawn to them.
It's one of those things. I think, a lot of women start off as horsey girls and then sometimes they grow out of it. And, I had a pony ride when I was a kid and, fell off and loved it. So I just found a lot of sort of a sense of security when I was around horses. And at the time, I didn't even understand what it was. I grew up with an alcoholic parent, so that might have had something to do with it. But I always felt safe and loved being at the barn, just being around the horses and the smells and the sounds and just being in their presence. And like I said, I wasn't really aware that I was being wrapped in some sort of little healing blanket at the time. But, I took lessons and then I would lease horses periodically and then I'd kind of get away from them for a while and then I'd come back to them and I would, muck stalls to just be around them or have the opportunity to ride because we didn't have a ton of money growing up and it's not a cheap hobby by any means.
No, it is sure not.
It's not exactly up there with planes and boats, but it can be.
It can be for sure.
So I would do all kinds of things to ingratiate myself to barn owners and just have the opportunity to be around the horses, which I did. Fast forward to doing summer camp with disabled individuals in the horseback riding program, which was therapeutic riding at the time. Once again, I was ahead of the curve, I guess. I didn't even know what that was at the time. And I would, go every summer for, a couple $100 for 8 weeks, woohoo. It wasn't about the money. It was just about the horses and just their healing properties.
I
And
think that's one
then,
of the common places where people have actually heard of sort of equine assisted learning and development is that therapeutic riding for either children or adults with disabilities or different learning styles. I think a lot of people have had exposure to somebody in their life that has had some level of an experience with that kind of stuff. We do it a little bit differently, but I think it's such a common place for people to find out about this kind of work is through that therapeutic riding work that you were doing. Did you say it was in your teenage years?
yeah, teens, early 20s. And
Yeah.
then I picked it up again when I moved out to Washington State several years ago. And that was kind of when I really got onto the path of, okay, I want to be around horses. I want to do some work with them. But I didn't necessarily want to be like a path riding instructor for therapeutic riding. Then I went into equine massage and learned a lot more about energetically holding space for horses. And as I was doing body work on them. And that was very interesting too. And I loved that connection. And I don't know, one thing sort of led to another. I found out about somebody who was doing some sort of coaching or experiential learning and found you and found the Institute. So that's
Mm,
never a straight
that's so
line.
So right before meeting us and talking with us and learning our skill sets, you were actually more focused on the horse and the horse's well-being, holding space for them and doing energy and body work on them. So you were already had the idea that you wanted to be helpful to the horse that was there in the experience, but then there's something that started to pull you towards wanting to work with the human aspect also, the human psychology, the human development piece of things. Can you remember what specifically it was that made that transition for wanting to be more also focused on the human in the situation as well?
Well, kind of going back to the therapeutic riding, I hadn't kept up with my riding skills to the level where I could actually be an instructor that way. But I also knew through my own personal experiences how healing horses had been to me when I thought about it, when I, you know, went back into, oh, okay, a horse came into my life around this time when I was going through a bad breakup, or, you know, the horses when I was younger that, made me feel comfortable to get away from whatever was going on at home. So when I started to think about how those pieces all fit together, I'm like, wow, that is really cool. And that makes a lot of sense. And how can I join those two things together? So I started, getting on the Googles, doing a little bit of research, and, you know, that's how I found out about it. So I think it was just sort of putting all my own personal pieces together.
Mm. And so then once you joined us in the Center for Equus Coaching, you and I met here in Seattle. We had a conversation. You kind of jumped in on an invitation that I had given you, and then you decided to sign up. What were your early experiences with the Center for Equus Coaching? Like, what was the training like for you?
I thought the training was, well, so let's preface this by saying I joined the cohort, which fell right into the beginning of the pandemic. So
Oh, you were our
it,
group that we had to have like plan A, B, C, D. I think we got up to like plan G and how we
yeah,
were going to be able to execute all of our on-sites and in-person learning. Yeah, I
yes,
remember now.
yes, that was me.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you were already prepared by having um, so many online courses or online sessions already in the mix. So that was a beautiful thing, and it did work out. It was the on-site things that were a little bit tricky. Um,
Yeah, for those of
but
you that are new to the Equus coaching world, our work actually it has about 32 teleclasses that are spread out over about a year. And then there's 3 on-sites that we do for 4 days at a time where we gather together and we learn our skills, practice our skills, and sort of do a skills assessment at the end. So there are a lot of online pieces that go into like teaching the coaching part of Equus coaching. And then we got to get in person for the horses. They're the whole reason why many of us are here. So we do those on-sites as well. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so the online classes were really helpful because that really gave me a better or a deeper understanding about the psychological aspect and the human interaction with horses that I was aware of on a subconscious level, but it brought it into like, oh, this is how it can be applied with another person, or, and what the relationship between horse and human and what those connections were physically, psychologically, and how people can benefit from this work. And it was also very introspective as well. Where you, as a coach, you have to face your own demons or whatever it is that you're dealing with.
Gotta live
So
it to give it.
exactly, right? So that was really helpful as well in it. And that, helped to enforce the sort of spiritual journey that I was already on. But it really brought all of the things that I had personally been working on. It just turned up the volume.
I think that's one of the unique parts of the learning journey that we intentionally create, which is it's not enough to just learn a skill set that then you offer to others. We really do believe in the sort of, you got to work through your own stuff in order to be a good coach, to notice how to, if you can learn to work on things in here, you can learn to support other people who are working on things out there. And I think sometimes people are surprised that they don't get to just come in here and actually just learn the skill set. They actually have to be vulnerable and try things out and work on their own stuff. And it's something that can be intimidating for some people, but I think it's a really important part that makes somebody a really good coach when they're willing to look at their own stuff, go on their own spiritual journey, learn their own ways around their coping strategies, around their blocks, around certain things, around their limiting beliefs about certain things. I'd love to hear from you, like, having been through that sort of the personal journey with it, how has Equus coaching changed you the most?
I'd say overall, it's made me a much better human. And I know that's just a broad brush statement. And some of those specifics are it brought to light that I could get rid of some things that were no longer serving me, like drinking.
Good.
I told you I grew up with an alcoholic parent and, was a professional, recreational consumer of alcoholic products myself.
Professional, recreational, love that.
Yeah. Yes. And don't ask me to repeat it because I probably can't. Um, but I knew that, it was something that I had been thinking about, and it was something that I have wanted to let go of for a very long time. And I just wanted to be clearer and more present with my clients, with horses, and just with life in general. So that was one thing. And that was kind of a big deal. It's also helped me to build just awareness about reacting and how I am presenting myself and how I'm showing up for people and also for myself on a regular basis. Because when horses are mirroring your behavior or what's really going on inside you, and you've got a 1,200-pound animal staring you in the face, you can't talk your way out of it, really.
No. As many times as I've tried in my own Equus coaching experiences, I have not figured out how to talk it out of it.
And it's not, the other thing that I learned too, I think was one of my first coaching sessions with the horses with you at our first retreat. I just really wanted to do everything right. I wanted to do everything good. I wanted to, show off my horsemanship, blah, 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 blah. Well, that goes right out the window immediately as soon as because it's not about the horse. It's not about what you know about the horse. It's not about any of that. It's, like I said, it's facing off with everything that's going on with you personally, inside, outside, whether you're congruent, whether you're incongruent, and you have a living, breathing, moving, pulsing barometer, or, in close proximity with you. And it's a very stunning experience in a good way,
Yeah, it's really interesting how you're going into an interaction with another being, with a horse. And many people associate working with horses in the ways that we're kind of patterned to see them in riding, as a tool on a farm. But we don't always necessarily first key into the relationship aspect with them. And that relationship can really open up and sort of put you face to face with yourself. Seems like it might be about the horse and getting the horse to do something. And any good Equus coach will help you remember that it's really not about that. It's really like, I always kind of joke, like, we kind of made this work up. It's not like it's this, like, it is real and it's powerful, but it's also like, there's no test to this. There's no, like, you have to get a horse to do something in order to be successful. That's all made up by the human experience. And it's really interesting to look at the stories or what we make up in our relationships with that. And that often becomes a metaphor for what's going on in your world too. And it's interesting how just hanging out with us and some horses puts you right in line with a big decision in your life to cut something out of your life that was no longer serving you. And what a drastic change that creates. It's like, how does hanging out with a horse create a clarity that you want to stop drinking? Like, but it does. And it happens all the time with our clients, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is about horses that I notice and that I try and tell people is that, and a lot of people don't understand, that they are prey animals. Mm-hmm. So every ounce of their being, every cell in their body is taking in information, processing the information that they take in, and then trying to realize, am I safe? Is this a threat? Do I need to get out of here? All of their, innate instincts are there, and they're just about survival. So that's why it's not about you, right? It's about the horse. And they're just taking in information, they're processing it, and then they're letting it go, which is something that humans have a really difficult time doing. We don't let things go.
How dare you tell everybody about how I process things.
Sorry to have it.
Well, you're touching on something that's really important, that I think one of the things that we always find as Equus coaching that can be the most challenging is to, like, how do we describe this work that we do? It's sort of like this experiential and relational thing that people understand once they try it out. But putting words to it to get somebody that's never heard of our work to understand it, it can be really difficult. Do you have any way that you like to describe it that's sort of like your elevator pitch when you're meeting people out there in the world and you're trying to describe what you do? Is there any way that you describe Equus coaching that you'd like to share?
I think one of the biggest words I use is experiential and non-judgmental. And also, because horses, like I said, don't judge, and that you are interacting with another being from a different species that is nonverbal. So you have to learn a new method of communication. You have to understand what their behavior is and what their behavior is telling you, and what you can take away from that. I love the piece of it. Not that wasn't a really good elevator pitch, but just the fact that you're presented with another being in a non-judgmental space, and it allows you to become grounded, come into your body, get out of your head, and have an actual experience rather than trying to talk your way out of a situation.
Yeah, beautifully said. So you've had your own experiences of how this work has transformed you. You've trained with us both at the regular Equus coaching level, but then also went further on to go to our master facilitator training, which teaches our coaches how to run group workshops, either for corporate events or personal development events. Lots of different kinds of groups can come together, but facilitating this work with a whole group that's there. How would you say Equus coaching shows up in your work now? Like, what does it look like when you're out there working in the world as an Equus coach?
I actually bring Equus coaching, or the aspects of Equus coaching, into my everyday life, whether I'm with a horse or whether I'm not.
Tricky, but me too.
Right? Because I think, like, what would the horse do? Right? What would how can I, because we ask our clients, like, at the end of a session, how are you going to take this back out into the world? Right? What is the takeaway that you can utilize when you go back out there and you're not standing here with a 1,200-pound animal? So I do that. I mean, I practice that on a regular basis. If I'm confronted with a situation, I'm like, okay, be the horse. Take the information in. What is this information teaching me? And then I can shift my behavior or my response according to the information that I've received. Because all emotional stuff, anything emotional it's just information.
Mm.
It's not, it also helps me to like stay in my lane. And is that mine or is that the other person's thing? And I don't have any control over their stuff, what their reaction's going to be or anything. All I can do is control how I react. So, like I said, Equus Coaching shows up pretty much every minute of every day of my life.
It's amazing how it
Like,
becomes sort of like a way of life.
yeah,
And you start
absolutely.
seeing the people in your life like horses, and you start reading their feedback as if it was feedback from a horse and trying new things in it. And I love that about our work, that it isn't just a job that we do. While I love the job we do, and I often look at my co-facilitators or fellow instructors and go, we get paid to do this. Like, wow, we are
Right.
lucky to just be out here hanging out with people, doing personal development, learning about ourselves with horses out in on ranches. Like, it's so cool. But it also becomes a really valuable tool that we all get to bring into our tool and sort of way of looking at life that we get to bring into our world, that's really supportive and really nourishing to the way that we can learn about ourselves and our relationships. So I appreciate you sharing that piece, because I think it's one of my favorite parts of what we do. If someone's actually wanting to work with you as an Equus coach, like, what does it look like in your business? How are you offering Equus coaching as a business at this point?
One-on-one, or retreats. I co-facilitate. I have 3 retreats scheduled with some of my co-facilitators, Frida Karsberg and Nancy McKay. 2 of the retreats will be in California, and one of them will be in Colorado. I've also been doing some online coaching as well. Once again, bringing the, sort of a blended model of
Mm,
doing some online coaching and then being able to either then take, invite that person to a retreat or into a one-on-one session if they're local. So just, really trying to find creative ways to bring, both the remote experience, because like I said, I do practice what I preach on a regular
mm.
basis with or without the horse.
That's what I love about you. I love that you actually work on what you've learned here too, and not just offer it to other people and talk a good game, but not apply it to yourself.
I do. It's so important. And you did say
Yeah.
one thing, and I just wanted to bring that back into the mix quickly, is that trying new things. So
Mm,
if someone is doing the same thing over and over and over again with the horse, and they're getting, guess what? The same
the same
reaction from the
result.
horse, same result, right? Try something new. And that
Yeah.
is a really easy thing for people to take out into the real world. Oh, if this way that I'm, showing up isn't working, let me try a different way and then see if you get a
Mhm.
different result. So I just wanted to bring that back in because you
I'm glad you
mentioned it.
did, because experimenting in our relationships can feel really scary, like our human relationships, because we're worried about the reaction we're going to get. We're going to worry that they're going to judge us. But you were saying earlier about this like non-judgmental piece, like getting to experiment with new ways of showing up in a relationship with a horse and getting feedback from that is so powerful. And you're right, does become something that then you can apply to your relationships on the outside world. But it's kind of like a safe container to do that experimentation with and try new things out, so that you can then learn, well, what would that look like in my human relationships? And then you get to see how those relationships respond to you showing up in a different way.
Yeah.
So yeah, good pieces that you're pulling out. What are some of the themes of the retreats that you're offering this year? You said you have 3 of them, 2 in California and 1 in Colorado. What are some of the themes that you're going to be working on with your clients?
That's an excellent question.
Still in design?
No, I forget exactly what the names are, but like usually when I do a spring and a fall
Mm-hmm.
retreat, the spring is about, sort of fall is about like renewal and bringing in the fall quiet, winter energy and that kind of restorative nature. And spring is about bringing things forward. So those are the kind of themes. And then the theme that I'm doing with Nancy McKay in September in Colorado is a sober event. So
Mm-hmm.
it's around in the recovery space, And so it's alcohol-free event. Not that we're usually out there whooping it up with the booze and the horses. That doesn't
Yeah,
usually,
it's a
that
little
never
frowned upon
happened.
to be drunk around a horse. Try not to have that happen at our events.
But it's definitely she works with an organization called She Recovers,
Mm,
and so she is part of that organization, and she's asked me to co-facilitate with her. So that's the basis for that retreat. So that'll be really fun.
amazing. Yeah, I have a feeling that the people watching this will get to hear from her in the future episode when we talk about it, because I think that work is really important. I think having spaces to like really work on things post becoming a sober person, I think that it's really helpful for a lot of people to be in relationship and practicing new strategies, because oftentimes the things that we learned in those relationships, as you said, like you had a father or parent that was an alcoholic, and then you started noticing your own sort of professional recreational drinking, and we learned
Good remembering.
strategies within our relationship, and then it takes other relationships and other experiences to undo those ties to those patterns in our lives. And so I think I
Mhm.
have a total hunch that we're going to be getting Nancy McKay on here as well to hear from her about
Yes.
her work with She Recovers. I also know that one of the themes in your work that's really important is this concept of equanimity. Can you share a little bit about that as we close today, and why you think equanimity, like what is it and why is it important for people to hold?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Travis, because I think it's really important now, especially
Mm,
when our entire world is been turned upside down on one
upside
level or another.
down.
Upside down, inside out, it's like, yeah, the spin cycle's on again. And I think finding equanimity is like finding the calm in the storm. I
Mm,
spoke earlier about, how horses process information. I think for me, anyway, equanimity is about, like I said, finding that calm amid chaos so that you can not have a downward spiral or not react in a way that is angry or negative or whatever. I think that if you can find your own center of calm, then you will be better off when things are chaotic like they are now. So that it's a little bit of creating a safety bubble around yourself, right? That's why,
mm,
my new podcast, The Air is Free, that I'm doing with Frida Karsberg, it's all about finding that calm space, the ability to take in information without reacting and understanding that it is just information
mm.
and just being able to exist.
Yeah, and I think Equus Coaching, I know, really helps with that, because we're getting feedback from another being on how we're showing up in the world. How is what's happening in here impacting the external environment? And I think it's really, at least, I don't know if it's natural, but it is somewhat normal at this point in human behavior to judge feedback as either good or bad, right or wrong. We kind of apply labels to it through judgment. And yet what
Mhm.
horses keep showing us is it's just feedback. And if
Yeah.
we can remove the judgment, and I think that that's at the core of what that word equanimity kind of means, at least to me, which is that we treat all things as the same. We don't treat some things as good and some things as bad, some things as better, some things as worse. All things are treated the same. And if we can treat it the same and it's all just feedback, it's good information for us to know. We want
Yeah.
that information. It helps guide us. It helps us make choices. It helps us survive. It helps us learn what we really want from the world. And so, even in an upside down time like many of us feel like we're in, it's clarifying the world we do want to live in.
Mhm.
And while we may struggle to see that world represented out there, we can learn how to step forward and start creating that world once we know what we want. And so I think equanimity is a really important piece, because it's about removing judgment so that we can actually gain the information that we need from that feedback.
Yes, very well stated. Thank you, Travis.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, I just know in our conversations, that's been such a big part of what you try to offer with people, and what a big theme of your work with people. And I think so important right now and so necessary for us to find places where we can even tap into moments of equanimity, moments where we can feel,
Moment. A moment. Yes.
uh huh,
No matter how tiny.
And sometimes that's stepping into a round pen with a horse. Sometimes that's talking online with a coach. Sometimes that's just so silently or in a solo way, kind of finding that peace within yourself. And I think it's going to be really necessary as we navigate the future, because there's so much uncertainty and unknown coming forward. And I think you're pointing in your work to something that's really helpful and restorative and reparative to our journey as we move along.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sue, for joining me. This has been really a pleasure. I appreciate you being our first adventure in talking with our Equus coaches about how they're showing up in the world and what this work looks like. If people wanted to find out more about the retreats you're offering or the one-on-one work you're doing, how do they find you in the world?
Yeah, you can go to my website, willoughbycoaching.com. And I have an events page. You can follow me on Instagram, Sue_Willoughby, or you can listen to my podcast, A Life Worth Being.
And you have a new one too with Frida. What's that one called again? Remind me.
Luften är fri, meaning the air is free. And that first episode will drop on February 26th. So it's a Wednesday.
Oh, exciting. I love when our Equus coaches are out there collaborating. Frida also went through the Equus coaching course and is a fabulous coach. And so I love when I don't know, we all keep finding this is work that's just more fun done together and shared. So Thank you for sharing the work here in this kind of version of it, because this also feels like fun collaboration for us as we share what this work is that we're all really passionate about. So thanks for joining us, Sue. And until our next episode.